Hi, everybody. So we have a lot of folks on the line. We're going to go ahead and start. Thank you all for spending an hour with us to talk about migrating from GP to Business Central. Just a few notes about us, or at least your presenters in particular. I'm Amber Colbreth. I'm over the NAV Business Central practice here at Rand Group. I actually spent over 15 years in industry. I was an end user of the system that I implement, Dynamics NAV, which was a predecessor for Business Central. I'm an accountant by trade, although I've also spent time in operations, inventory management, within oil and gas and manufacturing specifically, as well as some retail organizations. Also on the call as a panelist, we have Gina Santos. Gina is over our Dynamics GP practice, as well as SAP and customer experience. She has over 20 years of experience between consulting and industry, and she's a certified ERP implementation specialist. All right. So let's talk through the agenda for today. So we will give you a brief introduction or maybe a reminder of Rand Group and what we do. We'll talk generally about the cloud and the advantages of going to the cloud. We'll talk about Business Central specifically and the advantages of Business Central, as well as you'll get to see a brief demo of high-level Business Central navigation. We'll talk about different potential paths to migrate from GP to BC, as well as licensing and promotions currently offered by Microsoft. If we have time at the end of the call, we will do a little bit of Q&A. Okay, so a few housekeeping items. Number one, all attendees are in listen-only mode. If you do have a question, you can type that into the questions box on your GoToWebinar panel. Again, if we have time at the end, we'll start to go through those questions. We will record this, or we are recording this, and we'll make it available for you for future reference in the event that you need it. Okay. Oh, one additional housekeeping item I mentioned that wasn't on my list because it's a recent development. I am actually dialed in from a different state today. I know for those of you who might be dialing in from Houston, you guys are dealing with storms of your own. We actually just had something with really high winds blow in. In the event I lose power, Gina will notify you that we will absolutely finish this recording out and make it available. But if I do go completely off the radar unexpectedly, there's a likelihood that I lost my power as a result. We're fine right now, but just wanted to make everybody aware in case I dropped off unexpectedly. Okay, so a little bit about Rand Group. We were founded in 2003, but our beginnings would actually started much earlier than that. We spun out of a CPA firm, but officially became Rand Group in 2003. Included on the Rand Group team are a lot of folks that came out of industry, people that have deep knowledge of business processes and specific industries. We have accountants, we have supply chain people, people that came out of healthcare, oil and gas, agriculture, a lot of different industries and a lot of different business expertise included in our team. We work with multiple platforms, ERPs, different types of ERPs, which we'll talk about here in a second, as well as integration, reporting. So a full faceted team here at Rand Group, and not just Business Central or GP, which is predominantly what we're going to talk about today. There are other experts as well. We currently serve over 500 clients. We've logged more than 2,500 successful engagements. We have a 90+% client retention rate, and almost 60% of our existing clients transition to us from other partners. In terms of what we do here at Rand Group, as I said earlier, we have a multifaceted team. If we start on the left, we have a data science team that's really dedicated to reporting, data warehousing. They write reports. They work with multiple different third-party reporting systems, including Jet Reports, as well as Solver. We have Power BI people. So an entire team of people focused on warehousing and normalizing or transforming data and getting people the reports they need. We have an app dev team, so we can do customizations to our existing or to our ERP base, as well as build applications as standalone. there is a integration team that works to connect all of those systems, not just third-party and ERP systems. We've actually worked with clients on applications that the clients themselves developed, and we were able to integrate those with the ERP. The folks you're talking to today are part of the transactional systems team. So we're part of the ERP team. We have Business Central, we have GP, we have the larger Microsoft ERP supply chain. We also work with NetSuite, SAP, so multiple systems are implemented here at Rand Group. And in addition to ERPs, of course, we work with CRM, field service, some e-commerce solutions as well. So a lot of transactional systems that we work with. We have a cloud and infrastructure team. We'll talk a little bit about the cloud here in a second, but there's a team of folks that do that, as well as a marketing team that can build websites, as well as working on marketing strategies. So that's a little bit about Rand Group, either an introduction or a reminder for you all. And we will jump into why the cloud. So the purpose of today's call is really to talk about the cloud-based ERP system, Business Central. But the cloud in general, you don't necessarily have to go to Business Central. So if you think about something like Microsoft Azure, you can actually host what is traditionally an on-premise solution like GP or even Dynamics Nav. You can still host that in the cloud using something like Azure. So there are a lot of benefits to that. Certainly from an upfront investment standpoint, it's not your hardware. So effectively, cloud computing is just remote hosting of your applications and your processing. So one of the advantages of the cloud is, of course, you don't have that significant upfront investment of hardware, and you get to pay for the capacity that you use. So we have clients who host their applications out in the cloud, and they may decide to turn off an application after a certain time each day to really help control their costs. So that cost structure is a big benefit associated with cloud hosting. In addition, scalability, which is really kind of in the same vein, you can quickly and easily scale up or scale down depending on whether your business is growing or contracting at a particular time. So that scalability using cloud hosting is much, much easier because you don't have those big server farms that maybe you don't need all the time. Cloud hosting allows you to use what you need. And lastly, in the event, well, it's really not the last benefit, but it's the last benefit we're going to talk about today. If you have an organizational requirement for a disaster recovery plan or something like that, that gets a lot easier in the cloud. You know, historically, you would have to create a hot site, which was a huge investment. I mean, it almost could double your IT cost, depending on how you did it. You could do that much quicker, much easier, and for fractions of the cost with cloud hosting. So certainly, just want to reiterate, we're talking about Business Central today. Maybe Business Central won't be the right answer right now, but that doesn't mean you can't get started in that direction with something like Microsoft Azure. So that's the cloud. What about Business Central? So a little bit of background on Business Central. Its predecessor system was really Dynamics Nav, which is the system that I learned to use years and years ago. It's comparably, from a functionality perspective, comparably pretty much the same. The cloud version of Business Central has a different user interface, and the menu paths are a little bit different, but largely the same functionality. So within Business Central, you can get reporting, you can do supply chain purchasing, manage your inventory, multiple inventory locations, you can do forecasting and inventory planning and AR and AP and your bank recs. All of your major processes are covered within Business Central, and that's the on-prem or the cloud deployment of Business Central. So really anything from a business perspective is included in Business Central. So what about the advantages of Business Central, the cloud deployment specifically? So again, there are two iterations of Business Central. They're still in on-prem, but what we're talking about today is the actual cloud-based ERP. So what are those advantages? The first is staying current with technology. You may refer to it as enhancements or different versions. So Business Central, Microsoft does 2 major releases throughout the year, spring and fall. They call them waves. So those come out with really the big releases in terms of new and enhanced functionality and the bigger changes within the environment. That comes out on those major waves. Alternatively, at least on a monthly basis, if not more frequently, you get minor releases throughout the year. So these are going to be maybe previewing some new functionality that's coming out as part of major waves, or as well as any what I would historically call a cumulative update or updates to the code itself. Those will come out in the minor releases. So if you think about something like 1099s, and now the IRS has changed those forms, and if you're printing those out of the system, you have to be prepared for that. Microsoft is releasing that functionality for us to keep us up to date. And once you're in Business Central, they want to keep you very, very current with releases. It's also flexible. So we'll talk at the end about licensing and kind of how that works within Business Central itself. But you can make adjustments to that relatively easily. So let's say this month you have 5 users and you need 10. You can do that quickly and easily with subscription-based licensing. Alternatively, if this month you have 10 and next month you need 5, same thing. So you can make adjustments. You don't necessarily have to buy all those licenses up front. You can make ongoing adjustments to how many users are subscribed for your particular Business Central instance. In addition, from a flexibility standpoint, even though it's a cloud-based ERP, we still can absolutely customize it to fit your business needs. So it's not uncommon. In fact, it's relatively normal for maybe you need an additional field or an additional data point or some further enhancement of existing functionality to best fit your business. We can still do that in Business Central. We're not locked out of that because we're in the cloud. So one of the big advantages historically with Dynamics Nav was its ability to be customized or adapted to meet business needs. That's still there with Business Central as well. And then lastly, it's also connected. So there's Office 365 integration with all the software that we use on a really regular basis that's pretty much out of the box. Excel, Outlook, Word, those all integrate nicely with Business Central. Over and above that, it comes with APIs for additional connections. There are a lot of third-party apps that connect with Business Central. I mentioned earlier that we've actually integrated with systems that clients built themselves. You can use those APIs to connect multiple systems to Business Central. And if maybe a standard API doesn't quite meet our needs, we can create a new API within Business Central to connect your systems. Okay, so that's kind of high level about Business Central. What we'll do here is we'll give you a quick overview, a navigational overview of the system. I'm going to pull that up right quick. Gina, if you could just make sure when I get this up, we can still see it.
Will do. Yes, we can see the Business Central.
Perfect. So welcome to Business Central. This is my homepage. So my homepage is controlled by a role center, which you can assign different roles to different users. So I've selected Business Manager here. If I go to my settings, I can actually change this user by user. You can see there are a lot of roles that come out of the box with Business Central. We have accountants, we have sales order processors, all sorts of different roles. And if I were to change this role, the thing that I see on my homepage would be more menu options that are more likely geared to exactly what it is I do on a daily basis. And my apologies right quick if you all can hear the thunder. I'm sorry about that, but it's really starting to take off out there. So I'm going to cancel out. So the top page of my role screen is all about, or my home screen is all about navigation. So you can see I have my standard menu options that you're probably all familiar with. I can go to sales and I can get to my customers, and I can go to purchasing and I can get to my purchase orders from there. So I can navigate off my homepage through menu options. Alternatively, if maybe I want to search for something that's on my homepage because I can't remember exactly where it is, I can click this list view here, and it's going to open up everything on my page in a list form. That gives me the ability to go here to find, and maybe I'm trying to find something related to budgets. I can search for budget, and it will highlight all the options that I have to get to budgets. So list view with searchable features is an option as well. Now let's say I, as a business manager, need to get somewhere in the system that is not in my menu options. Well, I can still get there. So if I click my magnifying glass, this is going to launch the global search feature of Business Central. So we love this feature. Global search was available in Nav. It's even more enhanced within Business Central. We're big fans of this. So maybe I need to go to fixed assets. So I'm going to search for fixed assets. And you can see I accidentally spelled it wrong, but it's still smart enough to know what I was talking about. So Business Central is going to return to me anything in the system that's related to fixed assets, and one better, it's actually going to categorize those search results for me. So the top section is a section that's telling me here are all the different pages or all the different things that you might want to do related to fixed assets. I can go view my fixed asset lists. I can record fixed asset general ledger journals. I can get really anywhere within the system that's referencing fixed assets. The second section is reports and analysis. So this is differentiating for me a function, which is up here, versus a report. So maybe I want to go run the book value report. I can do that from the reports analysis search results that it returned to me. The third section is Microsoft articles or documentation related to fixed assets. So you can see if maybe I'm looking for exactly how to do something, I can go through the documentation related to fixed assets, and there's a Microsoft article that tells me about acquiring a fixed asset or setting up fixed assets. So that third section, all Microsoft documentation related to whatever it is you searched for. And then the last section is about apps. So there is basically a marketplace out there for people that integrate with Business Central. It may be some really specific business function or industry. They have an add-on that further enhances what you see in Business Central and integrates with it. So that's what the app source is. And there are a lot of apps out there available for connection with Business Central. So those are the categorized search results. Now, let's say fixed assets is something that on a really regular basis, I'm going to be looking at. So I can actually click this bookmark icon here. And what's going to happen, I'm going to close my search results right quick. It's actually going to pin that to my page. So I, as an individual user, have the ability to modify or personalize what I see on my homepage in the event that the standard role doesn't give me what I need. Now, you can also standardize roles at more of a macro or organizational level as well, but each user also has the ability to modify their homepage and add things that they might get into. It also gives me the ability to launch different types of documents. So if I get in and create sales invoices all the time, it will launch a blank sales invoice so I can get started without me having to go through the whole navigation menu to get there. Now, the middle section is all about summary information. So this is going to give me some headlines. And again, users can take things off of this if they don't necessarily want to look at it, but you can drill into these tiles. So this is telling me my sales are $1,900 a month. I can actually drill into that tile and it will tell me the invoices that make up that amount. The same is really true for purchase orders, sales orders. You can see all the sort of headline information. Maybe I need to see how many requests are out there. There is workflow with Business Central, and I can get directly to the approvals that I need to make from here. So the middle section, quick drill down information. Now the last section is one of my favorites. This is the insight section. So again, these can be changed. They change by role. But the first box that I want to talk about here is the report inbox. So I can set a system report up on a queue, is what it's called in MVC, that will run overnight or whatever time I choose to run it. And it will put it in my inbox for me overnight without me having to go run the report. So I set up a back order report here, and I set that to export to Excel because I want to view this in Excel. So if I just click on the link, it will actually pull up the Excel report itself because of that integration, and I can launch it and review whatever I need to review and action it however I need to action it, and I can do it all from my homepage. Now the next two, these are quick reference. Take something like favorite accounts. Maybe you're watching cash on a really regular basis. You can actually add GL accounts to this so that it will help you get to quickly without having to navigate to the chart of accounts. You can see what your balances are at any given time. The trial balance, pretty comparable. This is based on what's called an account schedule, so it can be changed, the information that you see in here, but you can get something like a really summarized trial balance directly on your screen. Now, the last box that we're going to look at on the home page is Power BI. So Business Central integrates with Power BI relatively easily. So if you have a license, you could deploy a standard Power BI app that's going to basically create and launch a lot of reports that a developer identified as most common types of reports that you might want to see out of Business Central. So you can launch that standard app, but even better, I'm going to navigate to my next report here. You can create your own Power BI reports, and you can publish those up to the service, and you can reintegrate them with Business Central. So depending on the complexity of the Power BI report, I don't want to oversimplify it, but this is a really, really simple Power BI report that probably took me 10 to 15 minutes end to end to write it, deploy it to the server, to the service, the Power BI service, and then reintegrate it with Business Central. So that integration is out of the box if you're licensed for Power BI, and you have the ability to create your own reports. Now, I'm going to put my business manager hat back on here, and I created a report to tell me any customers that we've allowed to go over their credit limit. So you can see School of Fine Arts here. We've let them go close to $9,000, $10,000 over their credit limit. So maybe I need to go take a look at customers. All right, so I have a couple of options just to rehash to get to customers. I can navigate from sales to customers. I could globally search for customers, but I'm going to use my bookmark here because I get into this screen all the time. So this is going to take me to my customer list page. List pages are all throughout Business Central. Customers, vendors, any really master record or transaction that you would enter like a header to, maybe it's a job or something like that. There are list pages all throughout Business Central. And those, I'll show you here in a second how you can push those into Excel. So we use list pages a lot. Now, maybe I, as a business manager, really only care about customers with balances. So I can hit my filter button here, and I'm going to add a filter to this list because I don't really care about people with no balance right now. So I'm going to change my filter to balance, and I'm going to only show customers that have more than $0 due. So you can see this filtered my list view. Now, maybe this is something that I would use on a really regular basis, this particular filtered list. I can click my save button here, and I'm going to name it customers with balances. And this is actually going to save this list view me so that I can get to it over and over again, and it's always refiltered for whatever I originally set those for. So this is going to be something comparable to like smart list capability that you can filter and you can create parameters and then you can recall that. So if you see I switch back to all, then I have the options to go and I can create all the list views that I need and get back to those quickly and easily. Now, maybe I need to export this to Excel. I've got to do something, add notes, or send it on to whoever I'm going to send it to. If I go to page, I can actually open an Excel. And just like the first report I showed you, it integrates easily with Excel. It's actually going to put this in a clean table format. I can add my notes or do whatever I need to do and send that along. So that's exporting list pages, and you can do that with list pages all throughout Business Central. Now, you may have noticed when I clicked page, in addition to open Excel, There's edit in Excel. You do have that capability on some records within Business Central. If there's like a bulk or a mass update that you need to do, you can do that in Excel. So what you see on this list page, I can actually add fields to this or take fields off of it. I can export that, make some modifications to the data and re-upload it, and it will update those records for me. Now, I'm not going to go through that because that process takes just a skosh longer than open in Excel, but you do have that capability. Okay, so back to my business manager problem, I need to take a look at School of Fine Arts. So maybe I need to know who to contact or who to work with to get this balance collected. I can open up I'm going to open up School of Fine Arts customer record. Now, my master records in Business Central are all organized by what's called a tab. I have the invoicing tab here, and it's going to lump together or organize data according to what type of data it is. Now, I'm a business manager in this particular case, so maybe I don't care about all this information or I don't want to have to scroll through this page. As an individual user, if I click my cog here and I go to personalize, I have the ability to change what I see on this screen. So maybe as a business manager, I don't care about name 2. I'm going to click the red arrow and hide it. I don't care about the last date we modified the record. I'm going to hide that. I do want to know who the salesperson is, so I have that field I can add to the page because I'm going to work with the salesperson to get it collected. I can also move between tabs. Maybe the information I really care about is who do I contact and what is that person's phone number to get this collected. So you see, I as an individual user have the ability to personalize my own page. Also, like the Role Center or the homepage, you can do that at more of a macro level, but each individual user still has the ability to do that to their own screen. You don't have to create a custom form and get that developed and then get permissions granted to it. Each individual user has the ability to move their screens around. So you can imagine the use cases for this. So something like a business manager where it's really only 5 or 6 fields they care about, they have the ability to do that. Maybe it's data entry and you need your fields in a certain order to get through a form, you can do that. And each user has the ability to do that. So if I click done here, now I'm going to get out and get back in just to show you that it saved it. So reopen it, it's going to refresh here for a second. And you can see my contact number is still there, my phone number is still there, the salesperson is still there. So it saves that to me. That personal page for me, and every time I get in, that's the order I'm going to see it in. So some pretty handy functionality there. Now I can also report or email. I can launch my statement directly from here, and I can email it to whoever I need to email it to. You don't have to download it as a PDF and save it, attach it to an email. You can do that from directly in here because it's integrated with Outlook. Additionally, for customers, you can go define specific document layouts. So what this screen does is it gives you the ability to give a customer their own invoice format. I know when I was in industry, there were certain customers that had to have certain things in certain orders. So I can create and give a customer their own invoice format, and I can also define who to email that to. It's not uncommon within industry that the sales order is going to go to a buyer and the invoice and the statement is going to go to AP. So that gives you the ability to really define the reports themselves as well as who they should go to on an ongoing basis. You can get that set up and it gets a lot easier. Okay, so I'm going to take a breath here and summarize a little bit about what we've seen because that was a lot of information. To go back to my homepage. So we have looked at general navigation through menus. We've looked at the ability to personalize your homepage. We've looked at the global search option. We've looked at list views and how you can filter and save those for future reference. Your ability for individual users to personalize their screen and reorder their fields. So a lot of information. We looked at integration with Power BI. So I'm going to take a moment here, and Gina, if you have any comments from the GP perspective, please let me know.
Sure. I think we've heard a lot of GP users have a pain point of wanting to be able to change their screens and windows. GP does have that ability, but it is through the use of the development tool called Modifier. A developer will have to make those changes, and it'll be something that's across the board. So what Amber just showed is something that's very significantly useful, very user-friendly, and it is a personalization on a per user basis. So it's a great a value add here in Business Central.
Okay, great. Well, there's one other thing that I wanted to talk about because I know it's a significant difference in the data structures between GP and Business Central. So I'm actually going to go to my chart of accounts and we can talk about segments and dimensions. So I'm going to use my link that I put on my homepage for not customers, sorry, chart of accounts to go to my chart of accounts. Now, a couple of things to point out on chart of accounts really quickly. Totaling accounts, we love totaling accounts. You can set that up as part of your chart of accounts, and really what it does is it gives you the ability to see total or summarized information on a particular section or subsection of maybe your balance sheets. And you also have the ability to run that filter, just like we looked at with customers, you can filter on the balance at date. So maybe I want to look at the prior month end. If I'm still in the middle of the closing process, I can set that filter for the prior month end and constantly refresh my chart of accounts without having to run the trial balance to see what my balances look like as the closing process progresses. So that's the chart of accounts in general. Now, dimensions in particular, I actually created a journal entry because this is a bit difficult to visualize. But when we talk about dimensions, it's an additional data point that's included within general ledger entries or really most transactions within Business Central. It gives you the ability to report on a granular basis without exponentially increasing your chart of accounts. So the comparability between GP and Business Central would be segments in GP and dimensions in Business Central. So within GP, if you have a segment that's something like a location and you add a new location, you've got to set up all those general ledger accounts for your natural account dash segment, all those combinations, you have to set those up. Business Central is different in that a dimension doesn't change your chart of accounts. You get to maintain your chart of accounts at the natural account. Now I'm going to drill into rent expense here. You can see this is a hyperlink number. Anytime you see a hyperlink number in Business Central, that means you have drill down capabilities. So I'm going to drill into that to visually show what a dimension is. I created a saved list view here. So rent by dimension. So I created a journal entry, and in this particular environment, one of the dimensions is department code. So maybe I need to make an entry and allocate rent expense by department. This is what my entry looks like, at least the expense half of the entry. You can see my GL account number is still just my natural account number, but I have this additional reporting data point over here that tells me rent by department. So Business Central account schedules and reports, they can be run based off dimensions. If you're using a third-party reporting tool or end up using a third-party reporting tool, they can report off dimensions. So it gives you a lot of depth in your reporting. There's two of these global, and then you can set up additional dimensions as well. But it gives you a lot of depth in your reporting without massively increasing your chart of accounts and effectively getting you to the place where it's difficult to figure out what to code something to. So a lot of functionality or a lot of reporting capabilities in and around dimensions. So that's really the overview. Gina, I'll check in with you before I move back to the presentation itself.
Sure. This dimension structure is probably one of the biggest shifts between GP and Business Central. It is a great shift because a lot of GP users have a pain point of growing their chart of accounts every time they add a segment value. So if they have a new department like sales, then they have to create GL accounts for every single combination of revenues and expenses that they need to post to that new department. So this is a great value add as well, where you can have a combination of chart of accounts and dimensions without having to grow your entire chart of accounts exponentially. One question that is coming up is there a way to restrict dimension combinations with certain chart of accounts so that you can establish those relationships?
Yes, the answer is that yes, you can set up restrictions within Business Central to not allow or only allow certain things to happen across dimensions.
Great. Another related question, Amber, how many dimensions are available in that hierarchy?
So there are two global dimensions. And what I mean by global dimensions is they show up on pretty much every screen within Business Central. So those are going to be the two that you pick that are most important to reporting for your business. There are also, I believe, 6 additional shortcut dimensions that you can set up. Now, technically, there's not a limitation, I guess, per se. You could have a lot more dimensions, but generally we try to keep somewhere 4, because most of the account schedules functionality can pull in 4. So that's typically kind of the mark, but technically you can have more dimensions than that. What you want to be certain of is that your 2 most important dimensions are your global dimensions, because those are the most they should be the most used dimensions. So when we work with people on setting up their chart of accounts and their dimensions, there's typically quite a bit of conversation around how many or what should be the global dimension, because you want to make sure that we get that right on the front end.
Sounds good, Amber. Thank you.
All right. So let's go back to the presentation. Gina, if you can confirm you can see the migration paths.
I can.
Okay. So we've looked at Business Central. We've seen at least a brief navigational overview. Let's talk about how we potentially could get there. Oh, I did want to mention before we move on from a demo, for those of you who think Business Central might be a good option, but there's really something specific in terms of functionality that you wanted to look at, my email address is going to be at the end of this presentation, or you could reach out to Gina as well. Please let us know. We're happy to set something up and kind of talk through whatever functionality it is that you're looking at. That was not intended to go fully functional. We would be here all day, but if there is something really, really specific that you need to take a look at, please reach out and let us know. All right, so how do we get here from GP to Business Central? So there's a couple of options in terms of how you might migrate. The first, and I want to address this first because it's likely you may have seen marketing content or something from somewhere on the technical upgrade tool. So there is a Microsoft tool that migrates people from GP to Business Central. Now I want to be clear about what this tool is. So it is in development. It's continually being enhanced and developed. And we've used this tool before. So what it does right now, and again, it's continually being enhanced. So this slide was probably out of date about 5 minutes after I put it together, but it will migrate your chart of accounts. Now it's going to convert your segments into dimensions when we do that. It will migrate OpenAR and OpenAP, as well as some of the summary information around AR and AP. It will migrate GL summary transactions. That's dependent on the accounting periods that we set up within Business Central. You can migrate your items, costing methods, on-hand inventory, and sales documents. Some of the things that are still in development on this tool is something like what I would call jobs or projects. So projects in Business Central are called jobs. That's not fully functional yet. Purchase orders were still being worked on, fixed assets, bank recs. Now all that stuff is on the roadmap, but the tool itself is not all the way there yet on some of those modules. And again, it's probably changed since I put this slide together, but those are included in the roadmap, just not fully released yet. And then of course, if you have custom functionality and custom data associated with maybe a custom table or something like that in GP, or you have integrations, those are not going to be included in the technical upgrade tool. Now, I'm trying to be 100% upfront and transparent about what it does and doesn't do here, so that nobody's surprised if maybe there's a significant portion of your business that isn't covered by that. It's not that it's not a valuable tool. It is. It's just I want everybody to know what it does and doesn't do, and that it's continually being worked on. The second path is probably what everybody's familiar with, which is a more traditional implementation approach. So if you've worked with us before on an implementation, you're likely to know that we like to come in and understand how business processes work, particularly if they have changed. If we did your initial implementation process, look at the existing customizations and really work with clients on an organization by organization basis to determine really what the best path forward is. So implementations, of course, you're going to get your custom data because we're migrating data. You can clean or transform your data. So this is actually a really, really common intent with businesses, that they want to take the opportunity to transform their data as part of an implementation. So maybe they have 9,000 vendors and they only use 500 and they don't want to migrate all that. Or maybe the segments that you have are no longer best serving your reporting purposes and you want to change that. So that's more of an implementation approach, where you take a look at your processes and your data and you look for opportunities to increase efficiency or scrub that data. Now, I did a summary chart here at the bottom. We would be here all day if I tried to list out everything, but if I look at upgrade versus implementation, if you're going to redesign things, it's a little more limited on the upgrade side, because the way that tool works, it moves all your data. So you may not be able to change your mind about costing method or something like that. You're not going to do as much data cleanup on an upgrade piece as you would during an implementation. Customizations, we could still come back in and further customize the system after that upgrade tool runs. But again, just to be clear, it's not going to automatically upgrade customizations. And then with any really approach, we would provide training and support. So there's no difference between the two. Now, it sounds a little leaning if you look at the slide, and I'm not trying to do that. I just want to be really, really clear, because I know it's likely that people have seen, a lot of information, or at least some information about the technical upgrade tool. So I want to be 100% upfront about what it does, what it doesn't do, and kind of what some of the advantages and disadvantages of really either approach. So again, we would make that on a company by company or client by client basis to determine what really made sense for the business that would be looking to move out of GP. Okay. So let's talk about licensing. Those are the two paths. We would love to work with you on determining what might be the best path forward. Licensing. So before, I know there are numbers on this, the next slide is existing Microsoft promotions. So keep in mind, for GP customers, they have promotions going for existing GP customers. This is like net new licensing numbers. So general information about licensing, we've talked about it already, but it's subscription based, it's named user. So the licensing here includes your hosting. So this isn't like an on-premise deployment that you also have to pay for Azure hosting for. Your monthly license fee includes your hosting. And it also includes the back-end Microsoft support. So they have teams of engineers that maintain their servers and monitor their servers and monitor performance. That's all included within the monthly licensing fee. It also includes the Microsoft code that comes out for those minor releases that we talked about, as well as your major waves. So all that's included within your monthly subscription. So there are a couple of different types. This isn't the full list, but these are predominant types for users. There are a couple other types of licenses, but for users, the first tier is really an essential. So it's $70 a user a month. And that includes most of that, well, that includes your core modules. I would say most of our clients actually end up on the essential plan. So you get AR, you get AP, you get purchasing and purchase orders and sales and jobs and assembly, and all that stuff means you can have items. That's all included in the essential license. The next tier up is the premium license. So the premium license is $100 a user a month, and to push you into premium, you need, most folks get there because they need manufacturing. So to differentiate between assembly and manufacturing, assembly, which is included in essential, is what I would call kitting. It's combine 3 parts, turn them into a new part, and ship it on a sales order. There's no routings, there's no work centers, anything like that. It's what I would call kitting for all intents and purposes. Manufacturing is the full tilt manufacturing. So you need production routings, you need work centers, you need machine centers, you need production bombs. That's manufacturing, and that's when most people get into the premium tier. Additionally, if you are using a service module, service management is included in premium. We've seen a lot of folks actually end up with field service as opposed to service, but within Business Central, the native module, that's for quick turn service. Think of something like an air conditioner repair, where you're out there for maybe a day and you have some service fees that you charge and some inventory that you charge, and that's about it. That's service management. And again, we've seen a lot of that displaced by field service, but it is available as part of the premium license within Business Central as well. The last type of license is a team license. So team license is going to be a really limited approvals. I think maybe they can view some things, but substantially don't have a lot of functional capabilities within Business Central. It's $8 a user a month. So if you have somebody that basically just approves documents, they might be a good fit for a Teams license. All right, now the last one, last slide, current Microsoft promotions. So to start, we have a licensing team here at RAND Group that actually works directly with clients and Microsoft to get this right. So this is going to be really, really high level, but they're currently offering a couple of things to existing GP clients. The first is a standard transition, and that gives you a 40% discount on your licensing cost. It's valid through June 2021, and there isn't any minimum spend associated with this one. The second is what they're calling a CSP renewal. And that's valid through June 2021 as well, but that's a bigger discount. So it's a 60% discount on your licensing cost. But there is a minimum spend associated with this one. So your annual, I forget exactly how they word the promotion, but ultimately it ends up that your annual licensing spend must meet or exceed your current annual enhancement associated with GP. And this one has to be completed before your annual renewal date. So if Business Central sounds like a good option, absolutely reach out if you have questions about specific functionality. But if you're approaching this renewal date, let us know, and we can get our licensing team to work with you on which one you qualify and how that would all work and what the rules are and all of that information. That team can get it to you. So please reach out, absolutely reach out, and we can answer any questions that you have. Okay, so we have about 9 minutes left. We can take a few questions. Give it just a second here. So Gina, if you don't mind reading the list.
Yes, I do see a couple questions coming in here. Amber, can updates be deferred?
So I think, are we talking about the Microsoft releases? I'm going to answer that question as if yes. So the major waves, yes, you can defer it. So the way that those work is there's a window that Microsoft allows the upgrade to be performed in. Now, we have worked with clients who needed to move outside of that window for various business reasons. I think we had one that was going live with a connected system and they couldn't take the major wave. So yes, Ultimately, we get to schedule within the predefined window when your upgrade occurs. And if we need to defer it even further, we present the business case to Microsoft and they will actually work with us to further defer it. Now, you don't want to get too far out in terms of taking those updates. We don't like to let people go too long without taking the updates, but you absolutely can defer it. Now, the minor releases, those come out automatically, and for the most part are pretty uneventful. So most folks don't notice that a minor release came out, at least not within the last 12 months or so.
Great. Another question here. Can you mix the license types that you presented in one of your slides?
Let me go back to that to help talk about it. So essential and premium are organizational level licenses. So you can't have an essential user and a premium user in the same environment. You can't mix those two, but you can mix a team license with either. Does that make sense?
Makes sense. If there's a follow-up question to that, please just put it in the chat if you can. Another is there a workflow available similar to the workflow feature in Dynamics GP?
Yes, there is workflow. There is workflow for document approvals, new master record approvals, and in addition to the Business Central workflow, you can actually integrate with Microsoft, well, I'm going to call it Flow. Power Automate is the name of it now, so you can actually include within your approval processes additional systems like SharePoint and some of those stuff. So yes, it comes with out of the box workflow, and you can further integrate using Power Automate to loop in additional systems.
Okay. Next question I see is, what is the reporting tool in Business Central for financial reports? Are there any third-party tools or related products like Management Reporter?
So Business Central comes with account schedules, which you can build yourself for financial statements. They come with some standard financial statements as well, but you can build something called an account schedule to change the format of those. In addition to the native reporting capabilities, we talked about Power BI, which is not really a financial statement report, but you can integrate with Power BI. And also third parties integrate really nicely. So Jet Reports is a big one, or Jet Global as they're called now, Solver or BI 360. Those integrate easily as well. So you have native options and you have third party options.
Great. Another question is, how long does an upgrade or implementation take for Business Central?
So it's going to depend on the modules you're using, the data that you need to migrate. So it's hard to, I guess, put a number on it necessarily. What we would want to do is talk to you about exactly what needs to end up in the new system. I see one question out here, Tina, sorry to interrupt. Is there a potential problem with custom programming and the upgrades? So we always test any custom functionality in conjunction with the client before we release a major wave. So theoretically, could they? Yes, we always test with the client. Actually, we have the client test before we release major wave upgrades to make sure everything's functioning as normal. That's why we can schedule it. That's why we schedule it, to make sure. So I did see a question as well about, do the discounts remain after the promotion? I believe the answer to that is yes, but I would want to get you ultimately in contact with the licensing team so they can confirm for you. Sorry, Gina, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're all good.
Okay. Sorry, my screen for questions is relatively small, so I'm scrolling through them. Okay. Do you recommend integrating Dynamic CRM to Business Central, or would you recommend a total conversion? So CRM is predominantly going to be geared towards sales activities, and Business Central would really take over the accounting and planning or ERP centric functionality. So I would say, I mean, depending which, if you want to reach out to me directly and we can talk through it, I'd love to. But I would recommend integrating CRM. There's light CRM capabilities within Business Central, but it's not going to be as robust as a traditional CRM solution that is built literally to do relationship management, opportunity management, stuff like that. It does come with, Business Central does come with some light CRM functionality, but if you're using CRM today to manage your sales process, that's going to be a much more robust function than what you see in Business Central. Okay. We're almost out of time here. I'm going to go back through these after we get off and reach out to some of these folks. I'll do one last one. Do we have the option to change data fields across multiple users or user groups? We didn't answer that, correct?
Not yet.
Okay, so if we're talking about screens here, you can do it at a macro level for everybody. That's going to be a little bit closer to development type of work, although there is the capabilities within Business Central to customize pages and attach those to roles. So if you remember from my demo perspective, I was a business manager. I, as a user, can go, an admin can go and customize the pages that a business manager would see. And then anybody that gets assigned that role sees the same page. So you can do that on a user group level. I think that's what that question means. So yes, you do have the capability to do it across groups, or you can do it individually. So I think that's all the time we have, and in a matter of respect for everyone's time, we're going to go back through the question list to isolate anything that we didn't get answered and reach back out to you. But we certainly appreciate you giving us an hour of your time. I hope you all stay safe. And if you're dialing in from Houston, certainly stay safe. Not 100% sure what's going on with the hurricane right now, but absolutely reach out to us if you need anything, and we will talk to you all soon.